And now my real pleasure is to say hello to Anita Mendiratta. Anita is the founder and president of Anita Mendiratta and Associates. She's a public author. She's the most influential woman leader, recently announced at a conference in Mumbai, I believe. And of course, she's a special advisor to the secretary of the World Tourism Organization. Anita, it's a real pleasure to have you here. How are you?
Nils, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be with you, so I'm very excited. Thank you for asking, and it's a joy to be able to speak to you again.
It is. It has been way too long, but you know, this time brings us together in a different time. Last time, I think we were having a glass of bubbles somewhere in the waterfront in Cape Town.
Indeed.
Or met in fact, it was one of the conferences that we tend to attend, and now these conferences are in the comfort of our own home with our jogging pants on. I promise I do not wear jogging pants. I wear real pants. I am properly dressed as you are. You look wonderful. Anita, it's a real pleasure to have you here. Thanks for joining us. You are no stranger to these interviews. You have your own show, if I may call it. We're doing it only for 10 minutes and I need to hurry up. But you're doing it for longer in Rise. There's one coming up you do it every Monday, or when is it?
Every Monday.
That's fantastic. He's a special advisor to the Secretary General of the World Tourism Organization. That's a big job, and it probably has grown infinitely bigger over the past few months as we find ourselves in this crisis, in this situation that is definitely affecting our industry, the tourism industry, enormously. Tell us a little bit about, you know, what does it entail?
Thank you. I shall do, because I share this with you with a great sense of honor and blessing in being able to have this role. Technically speaking, being a special advisor, I work alongside the special advisor, I beg your pardon, the Secretary General of the UNWTO, Zura Pololikashvili. He is a lovely man and has taken on a massive responsibility, not just as being the Secretary General, but during these times. He came into office prior, but my goodness me, we've all been just intensely involved in it, as you have, because this has put us all as a global community in travel, tourism, and hospitality into one strengthening of ultimately we get through this together or none of us get through it at all. And that has been one of the reasons for the intensity of the role at present. My role is very much supporting what the UNWTO is doing, particularly in terms of, firstly, when the crisis broke out, understanding, working alongside with the WHO and ICAO, what exactly is going on. We've never, as a global community, not even sectorally, but as a global community, faced a humanitarian crisis like this. It's invisible, as I say, it's agnostic. It doesn't care about borders, economies, cultures, ages, and it's taken over the world. As a result, we have had to put healthcare first, recognizing that ultimately, unless we manage this virus, understand it, work on a vaccine, roll it out, and make sure that the global community is strong, no economy can be strong. But the challenge is that in this process, it has shut down global economies, and now it's a debate between lives and livelihoods. So from a UNWTO perspective, it's about recognizing that all of our member states need support, not just in terms of rebuilding and restarting their economies, but as leaders, just helping them make sense of what is the most tired you were now, unprecedented. So a lot of the work with the UNWTO has been helping the Secretary General get out the model of restarting around the world, but doing it, as he says, cautiously. Because if we don't do it cautiously, recognizing the value that the industry has to supply chains, before this, it was 1 in 10 jobs around the world came from travel and tourism directly. Right now, we're losing 1 million jobs a day because of COVID-19. So how do we restart economies, but in a way that does not actually inflame the risk now of the virus spreading into a second and a third wave? So a lot of the work with him has been pushing very much, again, the restart principles that have been developed and that are available on unwto.org to be able to help governments and business leaders understand what next, with the support and the knowledge and the intelligence of the global community, WHO, ICAO, UNWTO, WTTC, and others. So I am the amplifier of his critical messages at this point in time.
That's great. Thank you for that, Anita. It being a global issue, a global crisis, and simultaneous. It's not like so that it comes in stages and whatever. There are a little bit of time differences, and some regions are in a cautious recovery mode, but we're still in the same time frame in a way. How does the Secretary General or the organization see it that when it comes to reemerging and re-emerging and restarting, that we don't all get onto it immediately, because it's a competitive environment. If I look at being based in South Africa, South Africa wants to attract the traveler from the UK, from Germany, and whatever. But so does Thailand, so does Vietnam, so does Argentina. How does one make sure that a reset is allowed in a responsible manner, for want of a better word?
Indeed, it's a very important question that you're asking, and it brings in some very critical points around sensitization about the life cycle of COVID-19. Exactly as you're saying, this didn't happen to every country at the same time. It worked from the east going west. We now know we've got second and third waves in the east. Hong Kong, for instance, stating that they're fearful of a third wave. You being in the southern hemisphere, I'm in the northern hemisphere, they're different times of the year and the virus is responding differently. So exactly to your point, we can't just all throw our doors open around travel and tourism restart, because we're all at different stages of the health crisis and the economic crisis. Some are on the up curve, like we know South Africa is, some are at the top of the curve, and some are hoping to be consistently on the way down. But the curve also does not mean that the virus is over. It just means that the contagion factor, the R0, is being managed correctly. So what we're doing from a UNWTO perspective is making sure that there's, again, that holy trinity between the WHO, ICAO, and UNWTO to get the healthcare in line, but also recognizing we don't have travel and tourism without aviation. At the peak of the crisis, 16,000 aircraft were grounded around the world. We've got airlines around the world that have filed for bankruptcy. The only aircraft that were flying ultimately during the crisis were those that were dedicated to medical personnel, shifting them around the world along with medical goods and operative requirements, and also repatriating people that were stuck somewhere else. So what you've said is so important, because every single destination is going to be competing with every single destination in the world. How do we do that in a way that recognizes we need to get aircraft flying again in a way that allows their revenues to rebuild and their employment structures to rebuild, having let go of so many people or laid them off? And then how do we mobilize the economies? Very importantly, though, every government around the world rightly is promoting domestic tourism. That is absolutely critical for two reasons. Firstly, we need to get people safely in their countries, working around a country that has protocols they understand. The comfort zones and the confidence levels of people need to grow again, because this thing is invisible. Walking out your front door is not as easy as it used to be. More importantly, and as importantly, is recognizing supply chains need to be reactivated. The best way to be able to rebuild a country economically is to get its citizens to rebuild it for them. So by promoting domestic tourism, you not only open up the supply chains, you do it in a way that does not increase risk from something coming from the outside and potentially weakening that structure once again.
Yeah, if you have domestic tourism, because I mean there are some markets, of course. If you look at Holland, Amsterdam 6-8 months ago we were talking about over tourism, and now they're saying, ouch, how do we do it? Catalonia is now looking for probably another curfew and whatever I just read recently. And South Africa also, we do have a domestic market, but of course the reliance on the international market was very, very strong, because nobody expected anything like this to come. Now, looking ahead, looking forward, it really is all about making people feel safe. A lot of it is real, but there's also a certain perception, because we don't understand enough of this virus yet. We don't really know all about it, and hopefully before we find out a vaccine is found, but that is still pretty much in the future. Now, restarting, and some of them are restarting. We are trying to restart a little bit, but then governments are making mistakes, don't always follow what we don't know whether it's best practice or not, but something that has been practiced elsewhere a few months ago. what are your advices, or what is the advice of WTO in terms of restarting, apart from the domestic thing? Is there a special program? Is there something that, that people are urged to follow? How do you work that?
One of the sound bites that my Secretary General uses very often is that trust is the new currency. And it goes exactly, Nils, to what you're speaking about, confidence. There are mechanisms in place in terms of restarting from an infrastructure point of view, from an investment point of view, from the connectivity point of view, absolutely. But we also need to restart as a global industry between people. And I think this is where what's really important about COVID-19, it hasn't just changed the values of tourism, it's changed the value of tourism. And people are recognizing now the importance of public sector and private sector working hand in hand, local communities working with local travelers, governments working closely with the industry, particularly at a decision-making level, and understanding why decisions are being made, so that if there is any question, there is a conversation that can happen. So I think the most important thing that is very much being pushed from my side, at least, is making sure that we don't forget the fact that as much as I am the special advisor to the Secretary General, you, Nils, are a long-standing colleague, friend, and adored leader in the industry. That's important. The fact that we can reach out and have these conversations, because one thing I found interesting with COVID-19, it's not about talking about the solutions. We are still on a long path around understanding the virus and its implications. So why can't we spend time talking about the problems? Because Mother Nature knows what she's doing. She has forced us all to go back to our rooms. She's grounded us to think about what we were doing wrong. So how do we collectively work together to re-engineer a new tourism model, so we don't have to worry about over-tourism? We don't have to worry about what we knew was a slippery slope. We were going on a path that can now be course corrected. Because I ultimately think that when you talked about over-tourism, that's ultimately overcrowding. And that we know was about bad management. But it wasn't just that. It was also bad manners. Just because I have a passport, a credit card, a cell phone, and an airline ticket doesn't mean I can just show up at your home, open up the door, and not knock. We need to manage the issue of traveler entitlement. It isn't, it's a privilege. And so if anything, all of us being grounded for 100 days has made us feel the value of our opportunity to cross the world, cross the border, cross across our doors, which means we need to respect that it's other people's homes. So I think that is one of the most important elements of restarting for the long run, is recognizing the impact we have, positively and negatively.
I love that, Anita. I think it's so beautifully framed how you put it there. Time, unfortunately, has run out, but the message is clear. Let's think a little bit more about it, and hopefully we will remember when things are a little bit more normal. Thank you so much, Anita. Lovely talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon in real life, eye to eye with a little glass of bubbles in our hand. Have a lovely day. Have a lovely time up there. All the very best with your conferences, Rise, and whatever. And we'll see you very, very soon. Thanks, Anita Mendiratta.
Thank you very much, and take good care.